Good afternoon, everybody. This is Susan Swecker, Chair of the Democratic Party of Virginia, and I want to thank you all so much for taking your time today together with us virtually to celebrate the life and legacy of Barbara Johns. With the help of the Johns family, the Moton Museum, Takeen Cooper, James G., Senator Henry Marsh, Senator Louise Lucas, and many others who either knew or went to school with during the Barbara Johns time, we are today hosting our 5th annual Barbara Johns Legacy Weekend. This has been a project of love for me. It is so fulfilling, and I learn something every year that I didn't already know about Barbara Johns. Her story always lifts me up, and Lord knows we need some lifting up these days. A 16-year-old girl who grew up in Prince Edward County during one of the ugliest chapters of Virginia's history, the era of segregation, and led a strike of 450 students when her grossly underfunded school, it was, tar paper shacks and the roof leaked and subpar everything. And when she went to her teacher and complained about it, her teacher kind of casually said, well, why don't you do something about it? And she did. She organized without her parents, without anybody else knowing, and called an assembly, got the principal of the school on, somebody got him on the phone and said 2 students had been arrested down at the train station. He ran out. She slips a note to everybody that says there'll be an assembly in the auditorium, and it signs it BJ because her initials and the principal's were the same. Students and teachers show up, the curtain goes up, and there's Barbara Johns, 16 years old, saying, we need to strike. We need to walk out of here. And they followed her. And her story doesn't stop there. I mean, she after that, and it was sometimes in that era, but after that, she phoned and phoned and phoned NAACP lawyer, civil rights leader, Oliver Hill, because she had heard of him in Richmond, and he didn't want to take a case in the first blush from a bunch of kids. I mean, he kind of heard about it, but he was busy with a whole lot of other stuff. She didn't let up, and he finally relented because he was heading to Western Virginia one day, and he thought, well, I'll just stop by and see what they have to say. And she and her classmates, the community leaders and parents, met with him, and he came back convinced they had a case and there was something there. And he and his partner, Oliver Hill, very soon after that, filed suit in Richmond Federal Court in Richmond, which was Davis versus Prince Edward County. And it was one of the 5 cases that got rolled into Brown v. Board of Education, and we all know how that ended up. Now, there's a lot more to that story because it didn't fix all the problems in Prince Edward County. And it's all really, really interesting and fascinating. And but I will stop just with that. I just always get so inspired and uplifted by her bravery during that time. I would like to take a minute and thank our sponsors for this event because we love doing it every year. And while we always try to raise a little money, we also do it for educational purposes because we feel preserving her legacy and what she did is important for as many people to know about and never forget and show how one person can make a difference. But thank you to Doris Krause Mays and the Virginia AFL-CIO, to Senator Louise Lucas, Debbie Johnston, Congressman Bobby Scott, Charlie Deardor, and Stephanie Lynch and the Good Neighbor Mental Health Services for your sponsorship of this event. Now, I want to say just how happy I am to have these panelists with us today. These are 4 women also who aren't afraid to stand up and take a stand for justice and what is right. I'm honored to count them as friends. And folks, I have to say, I know you're in for a real treat today. Minyon Moore, Yolanda Caraway, Donna Brazile, and the Reverend Leah Daughtry, a renowned political strategists, organizers, and civil servants. And in 2018, they co-authored together. And if you haven't read it, I highly go to your local bookstore, Amazon, wherever, and get it, because it's really great for colored girls who have considered politics. And it won the 2019 NAACP Image Award for a literary work of nonfiction. So, as a gift to the Democratic Party of Virginia staff, I have ordered books for everybody, and you all staffers will be receiving them soon. I do want to take a minute and just acknowledge Barbara's sister. Joan could not be with us today. She and other members of the Jones family, of Barbara's family, usually try to attend or be present, and they've been incredibly helpful in advancing her legacy. But she did send a letter, an excerpt of a letter, and from Barbara's diary that we will be sending around to you all to read. And I think it's just too long to read on this, but it's spine tingling, quite frankly. Now, we're also honored to have with us today the 72nd governor of the Commonwealth of Virginia, who's also a book author of What a Party. And Governor, I have to tell you, all the staff has read your book, and because I quiz them almost weekly on it. So I also want to thank Governor McAuliffe also for what he did during his time as governor to promote the legacy and honor Barbara Johns. During his term, he was instrumental in educating Virginians about Barbara Johns. The Moton Museum loaned a portrait of Barbara per Governor McAuliffe's request, to the mansion, which still is displayed there, front and center, to this day. He signed a resolution making every April 23rd Barbara Johns Day in Virginia. And he spearheaded the effort to rename the 9th Street office building in Richmond, which houses the Attorney General, how fitting, as the Barbara Johns building. So with that, and to kick off the program, I will turn it over to our moderator for the afternoon, Governor McAuliffe.
Well, thank you, Susan, and everybody with the state party. It's an honor to be with everybody. I hope everybody's staying safe. What an honor to do this today. I have three of my very closest friends on this panel with me, but it's significant, obviously, for April 23rd. Barbara Johns meant a lot to me. I will say I did not know much about Barbara Johns until I was campaigning throughout the Commonwealth. And I happened, while I was down in Farmville, to go to the Moton Museum. And when you walk through that museum and you hear the history, and the history of the 16-year-old girl that literally, she actually sent someone down to the town and muffled the voice, put a handkerchief over the phone and called the principal, said a student was down here, and the principal went down, and that's when she took her action. Very clever. And, you know, she led the effort. And you think about a 16-year-old girl doing that. At that time, in 1951, to put her life in jeopardy, and as you adequately said, led to one of the cases that got rolled up to Brown v. Board. And I think you all know in Prince Edward County, when we had the suit that said separate but equal, and then we had Brown v. Board, Prince Edward was the only school district in America that refused to comply with the Supreme Court order. And they said, we're not going to do it. And for 5 or 6 years, imagine this, there was no public education in Prince Edward County. Think of that. I don't know if not a lot of people actually know it. Instead of complying, they just shut all the schools down. So if you didn't have the ability to go to a private school, you had no education. And that's the battle. So you get the mindset, what she did at that time was truly, you know, heroic. So, you know, it came time to rename the big Attorney General office. I had a lot of suggestions of a lot of great Virginians through the years. There was no question that we should name it after Barbara Johns. And that's the action I took. And now that huge building on the Capitol grounds is now named for Barbara. But I do remember when I first became governor, I walked into that beautiful governor's mansion. And it was amazing that it had a lot of great old pictures, a lot of great old white men, some of them wearing wigs. There was not one African American on the walls of the governor's mansion in Virginia. I couldn't believe it. Dorothy and I said, we're going to fix this. The first thing we did is we put up the first African American ever. He was just a carpenter from a local county, but show the average man. And we put him up. And then the second, of course, was when we did the big dedication with Barbara Johns, which hangs now in the main reception of the governors. And we had her whole family, Barbara Johns, came for that great day and so forth. But for me, this was important. And the three women who were with us, and Donna will be with us, they've always been an inspiration for me to fight on the issue of civil rights. And Donna, who will join on later, we started the Voting Rights Institute when I was chairman in 2001 for the first time ever because of disenfranchisement of community of colors, all of the issues that happened in Florida. I took the lead. I took the Confederate flag, barred it from the state license plates, and banned the box and restored the felon rights. And, if you look at the things I did, big deal. You think of what Barbara Johns did, she put her life in jeopardy. So that's why it's important for all of us. And you did not mention, but I have a second New York Times bestseller, which came out called Beyond Charlottesville, Fighting White Nationalism in America. And I have a whole chapter on Barbara Johns because she truly is an inspiration to me, and she should be for everybody. And that's why I'm really glad, Susan, the party does this every year. Thank you for doing it. And hopefully after we get done with this conversation, talk is great. The point I always try to make, you got to do something. You got to take chances and you got to move forward. You got to lean in on all of these big different issues. So let me introduce our great panelists. I see Yolanda Caraway in the top. She and I go back about 35 years in politics together, doing Jesse Jackson's campaign. And she and I have been great friends ever since, but she's been at the forefront. I hope I'm not outing you, Yolanda, but she has been a member of the DNC for 32 years. Believe it or not, long. I'm sorry to say that. Because you don't look 32. But she's been on rules and bylaws, and when I wanted to shake up that party and change old rules, boy, I always had her in my corner. And I just want to thank you for years and years of service to the party and to me. I can't thank you enough for that. And I see Reverend Leah Daughtry right in front of me here in the middle. Leah, I brought into the DNC when I was chair. She headed up the committee for me. Chief Operating Officer, really shook it up, was our spiritual and minister leader while she was at the DNC. But, I'm very proud that during our term during the chairmanship, more minorities worked there, more women, more people appointed to the DNC in the history of the DNC. And she was always a bulwark, making sure that we were on our course. I think, Donna, has she joined us?
Yes, I'm here.
There's a little box, but I just saw it. And Donna, I hate to say this, she and I go back even further. She and I go back to the early 80s together. We started on the Dick Gephardt campaign way back when, Donna, which was a lot of fun. And as I was mentioning, I don't know if you're on the call yet, when I took over the chairmanship, first thing I did was to appoint Donna and Maynard Jackson to head up our new Voting Rights Institute. And she has been a fighter. She served as chairman of the DNC. She has been every single significant fight in the party's history to move us forward. And she has been a great friend of mine for years, and she's been in many battles with me. And so it's great to be with you, Donna. And
thank you.
Finally, my great friend, Minyon Moore, and she and I have probably been in more battles. We went through battle after battle in the Clinton White House when she was assistant to the president, headed up public liaison. She was the political affairs director. And we worked all through those 8 years together. Really had a magnificent time. But when I first got elected chair of the party, Minyon was my first hire. And she came in and we took over that party, which was really in very bad shape, bankrupt, nothing. And we rebuilt that party and put the party in its best financial shape it had ever been, redid all the delegate rules. We moved up, took on the challenge of, we didn't like the primary calendar. Iowa and New Hampshire are great states, but there's no minority representation in those states. And we brought up South Carolina, we brought up New Mexico, Nevada, Michigan for the labor vote. That had not been done in 25 years. But I always had big ideas, but you really got to get them passed by the DNC. And none of that would have happened without you, Minyon, leading that fight and walking out of my office and, oh, there he goes again. But dang it, you got everything done.
Oh, what a party.
Yeah.
What a party, as we always said. But I can't thank you enough for all your great efforts, Minyon. And we've all remained great friends since then. We recently all just had dinner together, which was great fun. So let's get in. Let's have a good discussion here. I think we want to talk about how do we lean in. We know about Barbara, but the times that we're in today, and I just throw out the first question and how we want to go about it. I mean, who are the Barbara Johns today, and what is it that we need to be doing, to take our country? I always talk about Virginia criminal justice reform and all that, Well, what do we need to do in the inspiration of Barbara Johns? What do we need to do going forward? It's a big presidential election year. Where do we go as a nation? And I will open it up to the panelists.
We should let the bishop start.
So everyone doesn't have to jump. Maybe we go around. Yolanda, why don't you start? We'll go right around and let's have a little discussion if we could.
Well, we did I don't think Donna was with us, but we did what was it, Instagram Live the other day with a young woman and her daughter who was 16. And she does this with her daughter every day at 4 o'clock. She is a, what's her name, Minyon?
She's a fashion stylist,
Fashion
but
stylist,
she does
yes,
a lot
but
of
she's been doing
things with
this.
the young people. Yeah.
Yeah, she's been doing this with her daughter, and it was so good because her daughter wanted to learn about politics. And one of the things that she asked me was, why did we write the book when we wrote the book? And I said we wrote it for girls like Summer, who was her daughter. We wanted to be inspiration. We have a lot of stories to tell. We've been around for a long, long time, and we just wanted to share this and give some inspiration to young people. I mean, I think they're the future, and we've got to get to them. We've got to get them to come out and vote in this election. We've got to get them inspired, because again, they are our future.
Mm-hmm.
I want to add, Terry, that the Barbara Johns of this generation exists across this country, whether they're serving an elected office or they're activists. They're raising their voices. They're making their presence known. But before I get into naming names, I want to applaud the state of Virginia for passing such crucial legislation, including the Equal Rights Amendment this past spring. This is a state that has, not only under your leadership, but the leadership of many others who are serving in the state legislature. This is a state that is moving forward on voting rights, on civil rights, on equal justice under the law. So Virginia is now a role model for other states in terms of passing legislation, whether it's on discrimination, fighting discrimination, or improving the lives of women and children across the Commonwealth. But when I think about Barbara Johns and the historic role that she played at such a young age, I think about all of the other young women of that generation who made their voices known by protesting, by seeing an injustice. And here she was, such a young woman who organized an event that changed the history of Virginia, the state of Virginia. And so while we look at Letitia James, the Attorney General from the great state of New York, who grew up, I'm sure not too far from where Leah grew up in Brooklyn. She is a Barbara Johns. When you look at Sheila Oliver, the Lieutenant Governor in the great state of New Jersey, whether you go to my home state or any other major city across the country, the LaToya Cantrells, the great leadership that we see with London Breed, who is the mayor of San Francisco, the mayor of Atlanta, Keisha Bottoms. There are so many. If you go up on Capitol Hill, Lauren Underwood, Ayanna Pressley. We can name names all day, including some of the great women in the legislature there in the state of Virginia. But we have a mission to do today, and that is to keep the legacy of Barbara John and so many other women in our heart and our lives, because now more than ever, Terry, as you well know, we need leadership, not just at the national level in the White House, but in state houses and small city councils as well.
And I think I would add, as you know, Terry, I come from the activist side of the ledger. And so there are so many younger men and women across the country who are doing the work of community organizing and community activism. I think about folks like Latasha Brown, and who's organizing communities in the South where the Democratic Party is rising. I think about people like Monifa Bandelli in New York, who leads Moms Demand, for organizing women around healthcare disparities and the needs and the concerns of mothers. I think about Pastor Michael McBride in Oakland, California, who leads the Black Church PAC, who is organizing ministers around the country, and I'm so proud to serve on that board, to organize folks to do the census, but also to make sure our folks are registered to vote, to get out in the streets, make sure people are being active. Right now, we've raised money in partnership with Twitter to give out masks. We have a program called Masks for the People. And so we have purchased masks that we are delivering to the hardest hit communities, hand sanitizer, because a lot of those communities are being ignored. And so, of course, there's Rashad Robinson, A Color of Change, who is leading his own digital online movement. Victoria York Elliott, who is in the LGBT community, organizing in those spaces. So there are lots of folks, up and coming young leaders who are in the model of Barbara Johns, who are organizing in communities where people live to educate them, to mobilize them. Some of them may run for office, but even if they don't, they're doing the important work of connecting with folks where they are and giving them the information they need so that when we come and say, we need you to vote, they are already educated on the issues, they already know what's important, and they're mobilized and ready and primed to cast their vote.
You know, Terry, let me just say this too. I want to talk specifically to the leadership of you and Susie, especially during a time where you helped define a nation. Three of us had the opportunity to be in Greece when you were actually battling what was the most significant thing that has happened to this country in the 20th century, 21st century. And so Yolanda, Leah and I, we kept saying, we got to get to Terry. We got to get to Terry. This thing has reached Greece. I mean, it was on the front page of the paper that they used to slide under our door. And I remember texting you, and I remember how just emboldened you were and how much your leadership meant to us while we were sitting, you know, thank God, had first vacation in a lifetime. But the work that you were doing for the state of Virginia probably said to Barbara Johns, I did my job. And thank you. Good and faithful servant, well done. So we look forward to seeing you back in that house because you've set a tone for this country and this nation that I think we can all be proud of. But I'd just like to echo what the ladies have been saying. We all have had tremendous leaders that we've stood on their shoulders, and we can do nothing less in terms of what we have to do for this country. So people think that we're bold. Some people think that we're brass. Some people think that we're educated. They think a lot of things, but what we know we have a sense of values and we have a sense of respect for the people that have come before us, whether it's Dr. Betty Shabazz, whether it's Rosa Parks, whether it's our mothers, whether it's our grandmothers. We believe we stand on all those shoulders, and all of our modern day heroes look different now. You would be considered a hero in modern day.
Yeah.
So we are grateful that we have the opportunity to still speak out. We're grateful we can still walk and fuss with people. So we're honored to be on this program today with you and Susie, and thank you again for inviting us.
Well, thank you, Minyon. Let's go back. We'll start with you going around. You got a lot of young people on this watching today. What got you inspired to get into politics? Who were some of your role models? But you're advising all these young people out there today, and you've seen some of the primary votes in some of the states. Still, the young vote is still way down. What is it that we have to do? How do you inspire? Why did you get inspired? And what do we do to get other people really engaged and let them know that this really matters?
I got involved at the age of 9. It was a playground in my community right outside of New Orleans that I was very interested in. My parents were not registered to vote, and so I took it upon myself to go door to door, organizing people, urging them to register. I got my parents registered, my neighbors, everyone that I could find up and down the block, and we finally got a playground in our neighborhood. I mean, that was back in 1969, but it was after the assassination of Martin Luther King that I got involved. And by the age of 21, when I graduated from college, I came up to Washington, D.C., and Mrs. Coretta Scott King, who, by the way, had she lived, would have turned 93 on Monday. Mrs. King hired me and many other young people to work on the campaign to make Dr. King's birthday a holiday. I've been active ever since. And the most important thing we can do right now is to check our registration status and get ready to participate in the 2020 presidential election. I think this one will be, we say it every 4 years, but it really is true. This is one of the most consequential elections in our lifetime.
That's right. And I should mention to all the young people who are on this today that Donna Brazile was the first female African-American to head up a presidential campaign for Al Gore in 2000. How about the rest of you? Inspiration, how do you get these young people fired up and to really have all the fire that you folks have had your whole lives?
I got my first inspiration when I was 14 years old. I grew up in Rochester, New York, and a friend of mine asked me if I wanted to go down and volunteer for Bobby Kennedy, who was running for Senate in New York State at that time. I knew Bobby Kennedy. President Kennedy had been assassinated the year before, and everybody loved the Kennedys. So I said, well, he's got to be great. So she talked me into doing this, and every day after school, I went down took the bus from the east side of town to the west side of town, and I must have worked for like 3 or 4 hours. And I stuffed, the things that we do when we're volunteers and we're kids. You stuff envelopes. If you're good enough, you get to make some phone calls. And I was really good because I got sent out in the street to knock on doors. And it was such a totally new experience to me. I thought, I knew that when I grew up, I wanted to do something to help people. I either wanted to be a doctor, which didn't work out because I couldn't stand the sight of blood, or a social worker. But I learned in working in that experience and working on that campaign, I learned that there are other ways to help people. And I started to understand what this political thing is. And this is how you get things done. So from 14 on, I have always been involved. My brother-in-law was a state representative in Maryland. I worked for him. I ran his office, and through them, I met Barbara Mikulski and worked for her when she was a congresswoman. And then I went to the DNC where I first met Terry. Where Terry I think you were working for Peter Kelly in finance, if I'm not mistaken.
Way back, yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
way
wow.
back then. Yeah, and I was working with Van
Yeah,
Lewis.
that was
That was early 80s, like 81. Yeah, really early.
Yeah,
And but that was how I got involved. And I guess I just got bitten by this bug. And I've always I love politics, and I love being able to make things happen. To make things happen that people would never think that you could, that just by organizing people and getting people together on the same issue, that you can really, that's how you make things happen in this world, in this country, in the world. And that's what politics is. It's no mystery.
I would say most movements are started by young people. And I don't really quite understand the disconnect that we're experiencing with young people right now. But if you look back even at Dr. Martin Luther King, he was a young man when he was assassinated. I got involved because I was working at Operation Push at the time, and they decided that it was time to have an African American mayor. And so the young people wanted to work for him. So I found myself organizing some of my friends and going down to his office and saying, we'd like to volunteer to help him get elected. We didn't know what we were doing. We didn't even think about the fact that you probably needed a little bit of experience, but we had the passion. So we went down there, we knocked on the door, and we said, hey, we'd like to volunteer. We'd like to get college students out. And basically what they said was, okay, great. Here is a corner, a desk. Now we're going to give you some walk sheets, and we're going to tell you how to do this. And we took it from there. But what we determined after it was over was our participation helped elect him because he won by the margin of the youth vote. And it was just a passion. I think sometimes we overcomplicate politics for young people. And basically, all they have to do is say, I want to do it. They have to have a will. We almost have to lower the barrier of entry for them. Because I think when they look at people like us, they believe that there's some magic to the way we've learned. But we really learn through volunteerism and just having a passion and a will to do it. So I would say to the young people, you can pretend to be woke, that's great. But really, if you want to go volunteer, if we ever get out of our houses again, just go down to Susie's office or go down to campaign offices and just volunteer your time. You'd be surprised at what you learn just by deciding to go open that door. Don't make it more difficult than it is, because we need you. This election, to me, is about you. When we look at the federal deficit that we're racking up, It is about you. When you look at your college loans, it's about you. So you should have a say in how we're making legislation. So I beg of you, you say you don't want us to be in the way, we'll get out your way. The leadership line is short. So please go. We need you.
Right.
I'm begging.
Well, as you know, I was raised I'm a church girl, and I'm a fifth generation pastor. And our mantra in our family was love God, love the people, serve God, serve the people. And so our father encouraged us to find a way to help people's lives be better. And that was what our church life was all about. So we were what would be considered an activist church. So marches, rallies, every member of our church, when you join our church, you get registered to vote because we believe in the process. We don't tell you who to vote for and how to vote, but you're going to be registered to vote. And our church, because of that, was a way station for anybody seeking public office. For any activist of any stripe, you came by our church. And so I had an early education from the folks like John Lewis and Julian Bond, and Betty Shabazz was always there, and Coretta Scott King, and and plus all of the electeds. You came through the house of the Lord. And so for me, the process, and what I would say to young people, it's about it. We get caught up in this politics being such a complicated thing, and it's really not. Everything in our life is about politics, because politics is just about how power gets used, who decides what, when, where, why, and how. And so we have politics. Young people, you got politics in your school, who's on the band, who gets the best laughter, what classes go, all of those political decisions that young people are making every single day around their friend set, around the movies they're seeing. Those are all political decisions, because somebody's deciding what's going to happen, and that's all that politics is. So I would say to young people, listen, decide that you want your voice to be heard in the same way that you go on Instagram and TikTok and Twitter because you have an opinion and you want people to know what you think. Voting is the way that you let people know what you think. It is the way that you force the country, lead the country to a future that is going to work for you and for your people and for your family. And as Minyon said, what we're voting about this year is about the size of this debt. Are you going to have to live with your parents for the rest of your life? Or your parents going to have to live with you? How much of your loan interest rates are going to be? Will you have health insurance? All these things. This is what we're voting on. This is what you are voting on. And you can sit home and say, I don't care. And when you 69 years old living in your mama's house, you're going to wish you had voted for something different, because the decisions we make now have long-term implications. The decisions we making is about your mama's retirement, because the market is crashing. Are they going to have money to move out to take care of their health care, or will they be part of your budget when you get older, that you will have to figure out how to take care of your parents and how to buy their groceries, and are they going to have medication? That's what we're voting on. This is real personal. My dad's 89, my mama's 79. This is personal for me. I will be at the polls, and I suggest even those of you who are in high school, it's about where you're going to college. All of that is represented in the leaders who we're voting for this November. And if the leaders will decide what your life is going to look like 5, 10, 15 years from now, it's not complicated. Get involved, figure out what you care about, and dive in.
Hey, can I raise one more point? And we discovered this when we were out touring with the book. The very first question that we would always get was we always had tons of young people. And what I discovered at the end of the tour was the very first question they would always ask is, how do we get involved? And then I began to think to myself, have we stopped inviting them in to participate? We've raised a very polite generation of young people, and we might just have to start inviting them back in and giving them ways to know that we care and we want them involved. Because that was something that just simply struck me. They just didn't know how to get involved anymore. So I think we're just going to have to really just dial back and get to the basics, lower the barrier, and tell them they're welcome. But we have to say it. We want you, we need you. And that's what I think, if anything, I took away from that book tour we haven't asked enough for them to come in, except when it's time to vote.
That's right.
And that's so important because we all came up in a generation where if we heard there was a meeting, we went. We didn't have to be invited. You having a meeting about the playground, I'm coming to the meeting. And if I have to kick the door down and bring my own chair, that's what I'm going to do. That's how we came up. But kids today, young people today, don't often have that same sense of belonging that will allow them to kick the door down and say, I'm here for the meeting. So we need to be proactive as older folks to make sure that they're at the table. As we often like to say, when we sit at the table, who's not here? Who's not at
Right.
the table? Who's not represented? Let's go get them and make them part of the conversation.
Mhm.
We're going to open it up to the folks to ask you questions. But before we do, you know, as you sit there today, you've all been successful in politics, you're successful in business, you're best-selling authors, and, you know, you've been great leaders in your fields. But it hasn't always been easy. And you think back to the challenges that Barbara Johns, you all faced some very significant challenges in your careers. I think it might be helpful for the folks here that maybe not the toughest moment you ever faced discrimination, but you know, you've all been through some tough times. It always hasn't been easy. And I think it might be interesting for folks to hear from you, you know, some of the challenges that you really had to overcome to get you where you actually are today. It's been a lot of work and you faced a lot of resistance in your life.
We're gonna let Donna answer that because she said
I was gonna
challenges
say, who's
have
going
been
first on that?
challenging.
She said the
Why do you
greatest
want me to
gal
go
go
first?
On that.
Well, you know, every obstacle has really in many ways become an opportunity. The obstacles that I saw as a young woman in politics, especially a Southern girl, a Southern woman, were the people were not familiar. They were not familiar with women as strategic thinkers, women who could organize not just their neighborhoods, but their states, their congressional districts. And so fighting to get in the room was something that I believed in. And as you know, Terry, because we go back to the Gephardt, if you think about Dick Gephardt had a Black woman, deputy campaign manager, field director, political director. Deborah Johns was our communication director, press secretary. We had Jackie Forte, who was our CFO back in the day. And then we also had Linda Moore, Kiki McLean. We had women from all different backgrounds who served. And it was because of men like Dick Gephardt and Reverend Jesse Jackson. I got to go all the way back to Reverend Jackson. I mean, they gave us an opportunity to come in the room and to serve. And I think we took advantage of those opportunities. And we continue to take advantage of those opportunities. But more importantly, our role not only is to sit in the room, but to bring in more chairs, including folding chairs, so that everyone has a seat at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Ladies, some of the tougher moments you've had in life?
I think for me, I think we all understand racism. We all understand being locked out, shut out. I think, but for me, my biggest challenges were I didn't really know if I was qualified to do the big jobs that I was being given. You know, I look back to when Senator Dodd and Fowler said, they want you to be political director. Your first instinct is to go, oh, I can't do that. But then when you tapped me to be CEO, I remember, Terry, when we walked into our first senior staff meeting, this was with the staff that was left over before you decided to change a little bit. And I sat there as the first African-American woman with a predominantly white staff. And I said to myself, oh my God, because the pressure that they put on you when you get these positions is just insurmountable. But I also knew that if I didn't have a boss that understood and really felt in his soul the power of diversity, I was screwed and I would walk out of there as the worst CEO you ever had. But your first statements, and I know you don't remember this because you done been governor now, so you're big time, real big time. But your first statement was, I want my party to look like America. And that gave me a sense of comfort to interview people, not to dismiss them, but to meet that challenge. And so I thank you for that, because when we left that place certainly because of Leah, who had to, really pull it up from the bootstraps, if you will. You had a place to me that reflected America in ways that we haven't seen for some time now. You know, Donna sat as my intern. I loved it. She was Katie bar the door. Terry, I mean, I want people to understand the governor was a chair of a party, and when he walked in that door and saw that receptionist, and greeted her with the biggest smile ever, and she looked like me, he made her feel like she was a real person. So from those little kernels of my life, I have been able to be successful and not even think about racism because I just don't carry that in my soul. I do what I have to do. I do my job. I try to treat people with respect. And if they want to carry that hatred and that dismissiveness, I let them do it. But I've had really good friends from all walks of life, and I'm grateful.
Right.
Yeah, I'd say the same. I've been really fortunate in my career to have had bosses like Terry, who really understood and gave us a lot of opportunity to change things, to really realize what the party could be or whatever workplace I was at. And so the challenges I had never came from inside the workplaces. I didn't have challenges when I worked for Terry at the DNC or Howard Dean or any of the others. I found more challenges outside of those institutions when you were the misogyny, the sexism, the
Yes.
racism that came as you went to meetings and people clearly weren't expecting you. And so, you know, sometimes you're the only woman, sometimes you're the only Black person, and that was sometime before Google, so they didn't have an opportunity to Google your picture. And you walk in, you know, you were not what they were expecting, and they didn't quite know how to deal with you. And so some of that hostility was challenging and hard to deal with. When I was running the convention in 2016 in Philadelphia, we were having a meeting with one of the big vendors, one of the who wanted to be a big partner, and I went into the room, and clearly he had not Googled, so he didn't know that I was the CEO of the convention. So we sat down and we were making chit chat, and I was ready to dive into the agenda. He said, "Well, is the CEO coming?" I said, "Yes," and he said, "Well, I'll just wait for him." I said, "Oh, you want to wait for the CEO?" He said, "Yes." And I said, "Okay, we can wait." And then my chief of staff, Matt Butler, who was he's now my business partner, white guy, he walks in. This person assumed that he was the CEO and got up, stood up, shook his hand in a way that he had not with me. And he said, "We can start now." I said, "You sure can. So I'm going to leave and you in the mat." And he said, "Oh." I said, "Have a good day and I'll check in with you later." And I left. And I left him there to talk with my white chief of staff, who he realized 15 minutes in was the wrong person. And of course, needless to say, he tried to call. I got flowers. I got all kind of stuff later. It's like, dude, Google much? I mean, it's not. I'm on the front page almost every day. You didn't know who you were. But his assumption in 2016, that I couldn't possibly be the CEO, it had to be the white guy, lets you know that this kind of attitude is still prevalent. And there were still too many times when we walk into rooms and we are the only woman or the only Black person, and people assume that we may not know what we're talking about. Of course, we can quickly disabuse them of that notion, but it still happens more than we would like it to.
I never had, I'm kind of like you, Leah, I guess I never had that much while I was working for the DNC or working in politics, but I did see a lot of it once I went into business. Much different, much different. Same kinds of things, but it's somebody thinking that I'm like the secretary instead of the CEO of the company, that kind of stuff. So it happens, and you just learn to live with it.
Yeah. The point I tried to make in my book is, racism exists today in the country. I mean, Barbara Johns and others have led an effort, but, as long as you have inequities in school and housing and a criminal justice system, And I know for a lot of white people, it's just not a comfortable topic, but that's, I get tired of reconciliation commissions and all this. They mean nothing. It's just white people talking, making themselves feel good. You gotta lean in. You gotta do something. I mean, and I dealt with a lot of it in Virginia. We still have a long way to go to the criminal justice system. I remember going out the door, I pardoned a guy by the name of Lenny Singleton. Lenny was a young man who was a drug addict. He committed 5 robberies. The total theft of 5 robberies was about $511. Nobody was injured. He was going to like 7-Eleven stealing money for his drug habit, but nobody injured. His sentence in the Commonwealth of Virginia was 2 life sentences plus 130 years.
Oh,
Wow.
For $511. So I pardoned him. Unfortunately, he'd spent many years. So my point is, and that's why you guys are all so important, is it's out there today. We got to lean in. People got to quit talking about it.
yeah,
And
yeah.
we gotta work hard. And if you
That's
got
right.
different school districts and you've got children with not the same quality teacher or inferior qualities, that's racism. We saw
Right.
clowns
Right.
come to Charlottesville with their horrible message.
Yeah.
That's why you're all such an
Right.
inspiration to all of us all.
Well, you have to
Thanks.
call it out. Let me
A
see it.
couple questions in from your members and people who have signed on.
Yeah, can you read those? Or do you want me to read them out? Can you
Why
hear
don't
me?
you read them? I put my glasses on. Really
Yeah,
tight.
it's, one of our
Take the questions out so I
amazing-
can see Donna. That's
Yeah.
the question box is right in front of her.
Look at you.
Okay, Gary, Charlie Conrad from Arlington, one of our best leaders in the party, has a question.
Yes.
And he wants to know what you all would say to high school seniors specifically that are graduating this year.
Well, I would first of all request that they all register to vote, because their vote is their voice, and that's so vital and important. Number 2, I hope that many of them are preparing for their future careers, and that they are preparing for some form of post-secondary education to complete their skill training and skill building. Number 3, I know that we don't know how things will unravel or come together after this pandemic, but go ahead and begin to think about your future. Think about the careers that you want to lead. Think about the things that you want to do with your life, and try to stay focused on some of those goals, especially now. Read more than just your school assignments, but try to read a little bit about history. Get better acquainted with some of the most important things that have happened in this country over the last 235 years. And lastly, if there are any volunteer opportunities throughout this period where you can do it safely, like bringing groceries to people who are unable to go out, or walk pets for people who simply cannot afford to pet sitters right now. Find ways to serve, find ways to make a difference. And that's what I would urge high school students to do right now. And I also want to say to all of the seniors, congratulations. Congratulations on completing 12 years of school. And we look forward to celebrating with you, and we look forward to having a party once we're able to gather again.
Anybody else?
That's perfect.
Perfect.
Okay, before I ask the next question, I just wanted to give special recognition and a shout out to our friend Henry Marsh, who is on the call this evening with us, one of my mentors and someone.
Hey,
Yeah.
Hey, Henry.
thank you. Thank you so much for your service and your leadership.
And the next question then is from Bo Dickinson. Bo lives in Rockingham County, and he spends about as much time talking about Barbara Johns as I do. He teaches in the Rockingham County schools, and he takes a group of students. Of course, they had to cancel it this year, but students every year to the Moton Museum, and usually Joan, Barbara's sister, and some other family members come and they do the whole tour and the whole history of that. So I'm gonna give Bo a shout out as I ask his question here, which let me see now. Colleen, I have somehow lost, but wait, there it is. All right. Until very recently, Barbara Johns and the Prince Edward County case was not taught in Virginia public schools. This has started to change thanks to Governors Warner, King, and McAuliffe in celebrating and recognizing this powerful chapter. What does the panel think about the state of Black history education and teaching students about our history as well as the realities of race, civil rights, and equity? That's a lot there, ladies.
Well, obviously, I think we've come a long ways.
Obviously, I think we've come a long ways.
But I think do I have an echo?
Yeah.
Well, what, can somebody take that right quick and I'll try to fix my technology?
You sound better now.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, I think we've come a long ways, but we also have a long ways to go. And, Donna actually is the teacher of the bunch because she actually is a professor at Howard University and she's a professor at Georgetown. And she probably can tell you uniquely, some of the struggles and the challenges of making sure that our children are educated. Because when I went to high school, we had Black history as a course. It was a curriculum. And one of the greatest lessons I learned was from my African-American teacher. Her name was Mrs. McPherson. We had history, we had Black history, just like we had American history, which is history. And so these days, kids don't have that joy or that opportunity. But I think if you have enough thoughtful teachers that are out there and you have people that are pushing the envelope saying you gotta balance this education out, then I think we can have more educated people all around, because I think it's important to have the Barbara Johns of the world discussed. I think people see, Dr. Martin Luther King and Rosa Parks as the beginning and the end of our history. It really is not. And so thank you, and I applaud you for doing all the hard work you're doing, but, I think it's just a struggle, and we have to each one teach one. The parents have to continue to teach Black history in their homes. You have to buy Black history books, which are plentiful. And you can buy the Color Girls books, which is got a lot of Black history in it. So there's lots of ways that we continue to move forward on Black history.
And there's so many books we need to start them younger and younger. I mean, there's so many great books out there for small kids, like 6 kids are just learning how to read, and that's probably up to the parents to make sure that they have these kind of materials so that they can learn.
But this is also an area for activism, because every state, every municipality has some mechanism that approves school curriculum. So it's a good place to get involved, not only for Black history, but also there's no more civics education.
Right.
Understand 3 branches of government and all, and that's part of the disconnect we're seeing in our young people, because they don't see how it makes a difference in their lives. And so there's an African proverb that says, until the lions tell the story, the hunter always wins. Right? So it's a good way for those of us, maybe you're not running for Senate and you're not running but you can get on your school board or go to the school board meetings and understand and fight for the curriculum that your children are going to be getting in their schools. That's not to say you don't have to do your job as a parent with extra stuff, but what's in the school, and you can influence that and make a difference in the curriculum. But you got to get involved and you got to get engaged in that to restore things like Black history, to restore things like music education, to restore things like civics education. That's on us to force the school system to respond in a way that makes a difference for our children.
Is that Sally that keeps
Sally?
walking past?
Somebody just walked past.
Hello, everybody, Sal. Sally has been on lockdown here with her dad for 6 weeks. She's loving it. She did.
Oh my
Hi,
God.
Sally.
Hi, Sally.
Oh my God.
I've got 3 of the 5 here.
Oh my.
Yeah, Mary's over in Israel. She's in Tel Aviv, and Jack's still in the Marine Corps. So, but he'll be out in a month, so I'll have 4 of the 5. So it's fun, great quality family time.
How's
Right.
Dorothy doing? How's
After
Dorothy?
33 years of marriage, man, Dorothy's loving every minute of this.
Amen. Hey, I remember when you first met her.
Yeah, yeah. I used to travel 200 days a year. She's saying, what's this all about?
Right?
It's a honeymoon.
It's a honeymoon.
Yeah,
Exactly.
right, exactly.
Speaking of books we're all reading, I mean, there's some great books on Barbara Johns, The Girl from the Tar Paper School, and
Right.
whatever happened in Prince Edward County. I mean, such a piece of history. I mean, people don't know we're the only school district in America that said, no, we're not going to comply. We're just shutting all public education down. And there's a
Right.
book about a whole generation of folks in Prince Edward County who had no education because of this. And what's happened to them today. Fascinating.
Mhm.
And what Mark Warner did too, then to help them when he was governor and got past the Brown Scholarship so that people who didn't graduate had an opportunity to go back to school.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So
Some of them.
important. So important. Any more questions, Madam Chair?
Yeah, I'm really want to hear what you all are going to say about this. This is from Deborah Rodman. Campaigning is going to change radically over the next few months as a result of social distancing. How can we stay inclusive and make sure we meet folks where they are when we can't knock on doors yet?
Mhm.
That's a great question that we're gonna have to figure out.
Well, first of all, we're going to have to use every online tool that we have at our disposal to message, to communicate, to register voters, and to encourage people to vote. As you know, we haven't had an opportunity to vote yet in the District of Columbia during the primary season, but already I've been receiving mail from candidates, especially here in Washington, D.C.
Mhm.
Candidates are telling us what's going on. I've been on a lot of conference calls. While no one is knocking at my door, thank God, because I'm not opening my door. The only person who should be coming to my house right now is the mailman, and I've made that very clear with everyone. But it's important that we remain in touch. Yes, it's going to change the way we organize and get people out to vote, inform people, persuade people, but we have to use these tools. And for areas of this country, and especially in communities of color and other places that we know may not have the broadband capabilities, we're going to have to find ways to reach them. We're going to have to encourage people that while you may not hang out in the coffee shop, maybe if you can keep the right distance, you can still find people, still meet them where they are, so that we can encourage as many Americans as possible to be engaged, to be active, and of course, to vote.
You know, the other thing I would add to that, Donna, is, if you really look at what's going on right now, the old has become new and the new has become. Because now people have to go back to mail ballots. I was looking at my emails yesterday where the mayor has already sent out an email saying to us, please register or get your absentee ballot or get,
Yep.
they're actually sending stuff to us. And I think this is where young people can help us bridge the gap because a lot of this stuff has to be filled out online. So if you have a grandparent, if you have a parent who is not as proficient as you are when it comes to online stuff, please help them. If all you got to do is go online, fill out the application so that they can get an absentee ballot. And we can bridge the old and the new. I get mailers every day from some candidate. We might go back to robocalls as far as I know. But between the new technology and the old stuff, this is where integration can become quite important. And it can be an integrated strategy with young people and older people. So I'm encouraging our young people to take the lead in helping people that are not online to make sure they get registered. I'm going to depend on them to make sure they don't fall off the rolls.
Me too.
Yeah, listen. I think Minyon said it best. Everything old is new again, and so mail is going to be important. Radio is going to be
Mm-hmm.
important. We've sort of walked away from radio and television, but everybody's watching TV, and everybody, and in these rural communities, as you know, Terry, I do a lot of work in rural America, where there is no broadband. So you're not going to reach those voters with any kind of YouTube or whatever. You better get on the radio and you better send them some mail. And you might want to go through their communities on speakers, because that's how you're going to reach those voters who are not, who simply The internet has not reached their community. Of course, that's its own indictment on our society that we still have places in America that don't have connectivity. But for this election, we're going to have to go back to some of the old ways that we've abandoned in order to reach those voters. Terry, you'll remember that there was a point where we bought up all the radio in rural Montana. We just bought everything that there was to buy and constantly ran ads in order to reach those voters, because that's what they're in their trucks driving to their farms and they're listening to the radio. And we were able to win seats in rural America during Terry's tenure as the chair because we were smart enough to buy where people were listening.
Listen, if you don't talk to them, they ain't going to support you.
Exactly.
Never write anybody off in this country. Everybody is open to listen to you. You know, I remember when I was chair of the two of you there, I'd go on Fox all the time and people would call and give you great. At the end of the day, there are some people on that who will pay attention to you. But if you don't ever talk to them, you ain't ever changing their minds.
That's right. No, that's
Remember,
absolutely.
the only way Trump can conceivably believe he can win in his mind is through voter suppression. So we have really, whatever we've all been at, we got to double down those efforts. You saw what happened to Stacey Abrams. This is going to be their playbook. Russia's going to be as active as they were in 20, and they're going to do voter suppression and signature law. They're going to do everything they possibly can. So we actually got to work harder than we've ever done it before.
Yep, I believe you. You're right.
Yeah, and when all this stuff, all this business about the post office and trying to not fund the post office, you know what that's about.
Yeah.
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 So Terry, can we ask you one quick question while we have your brilliance? How do you see this presidential election shaping up with Vice President Biden? And, you know, is it things that we should be doing and looking out for as we go through the summer with knowing whether we got a convention or not a convention? Or
And listen, my personal opinion, this is just me, and I've been talking with the NC a lot. I think it's not likely we're probably going to have a convention. I just don't know if we're going to bring 40,000 people together in Milwaukee. So then we got to think, this is my opinion. I don't want anyone to go out and say we're not having a convention, but I just think that's highly unlikely. If you look at where these W's go and they're talking about COVID, which then gives us unique opportunities. What do we do with that TV time every night? Maybe things, different parts of the country. A lot of creative thought we all need to put into this. What do we actually do with that?
mm-hmm.
You know, as you well know, we lost 3 states by 77,000 votes.
Right.
350,000 people voted for a third-party candidate like Jill Stein. We're not going to have that issue. The thing that encourages me, Minyon, more than anything, is 92 million people did not vote in 2016. They woke up the next day and said, holy cow, how did this happen? And since that time, look at Virginia in 17, record turnout. 18, we win the House, 7 governors, 8 chambers, 350 state rep seats. 19 again, we pick up both seats in both chambers in Virginia. In 20, let's just take Virginia, our turnout was up 68%. That is almost statistically impossible. My point is, are we going to get those? Yes, we are. But we've expanded the map. North Carolina, a Florida, a Georgia, Ohio, Arizona, bigger map for us. Today, we would win control of the Senate. We need 4 if we do lose Alabama. Today, we're up in Arizona, Colorado, Montana, Maine, and North Carolina. But we got to keep young people energized. Our party is unified for all of us on this call. We remember 2008, that went till June. 2016 went till July. Here we are, early April. And Biden has got to reach out to all the wings, the progressive wing. You know, he embraced Warren's bankruptcy bill. He joined on education, free education on 125. So he's made good moves. But we got to run a sharp campaign. Got to be a new type of campaign. I'm optimistic. People don't want to vote for Trump. The NBC Wall Street Journal poll yesterday, 1 out of 3 Americans trust him on coronavirus. Now, in a crisis like this, people rally around the president because of all of his lies and drinking Lysol and all the insanity. People have given up on it. But it's not going to be a cakewalk. It's just they're going to vote on the other side. They're going to lie about us, and they're going to vote or disenfranchise. So we're in the best position we've been in. But, you know, we can all say this because we've been there. If any party can screw this up, it's the
It'll be us. We can mess up a 1-car funeral.
You all know what I'm saying.
Yeah, exactly.
But we need a big, broad, inclusive tent for everybody, and that's what we're trying to build. I'm very active, and trying to get everybody working together and think a little bit differently and out of the box. So
Mhm.
we got to do it. The
Totally
vice
agree.
presidential pick obviously will be exciting. It'll be a woman, obviously, and we can do this. We've proven that we can do it. Turnout is up. We just got to continue to do it.
Absolutely. And
I
So I
agree.
want to thank you all for getting on, and to all the viewers we have here. Susan, thank you again for the party for putting this together. And the idea that I get to moderate with 4 of my closest friends, that battles that the 5 of us have been through for the last 40 years has been exciting. And you know what? We're all smiling today, and we're ready to get back in that ring again tomorrow if we have to.
That's right.
that is so
That's
true.
right. We got to do this.
Anybody have any final words of wisdom or thoughts, or as we move through this phase of our lives and hope to somewhere soon get back into a little bit of normalcy? Maybe that won't happen till after
Some
the
thoughts, ladies?
election.
Well,
I
I
would
just
just
want
simply
to,
say,
go ahead. Go ahead, Minnie.
say to the people that are listening, don't get discouraged, because that's a form of apathy too. And you have some of the best leaders in the country trying to root for us, so we have to give them a little help by pressing our own levers and making sure that we are inspiring each other. Each one teach one. I'll keep saying that. Each one teach one. We don't have to lose this just by apathy. That's what they want. They want us. They will suppress us by all of the barriers they're putting in the way. So let's stay encouraged and optimistic. See if we can keep that smile going, like Governor McAuliffe. I don't know how he smiles 24 hours a day, but we'll have to adapt that to November. But I think that's where I'll leave my thoughts.
And I want to say thank you to Terry, to Susan, to the entire team at the Virginia Democratic Party, and also to your congressional delegation. I know you have a spectacular delegation, but they have often spoken up and helped us here in the District of Columbia, especially as it relates to this COVID pandemic. And we appreciate the leadership that you've shown, and we are really grateful for all of the help that you're giving to Mayor Bowser and her team here in DC. So thank you so much.
Donna, we get the House, Senate, and White House this November. Right out of the box, DC stated it has to be the first thing out of
I
the box.
agree. I
Amen.
totally agree.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Amen.
We got to do it. Absolutely.
Leah, final thoughts? Yolanda?
Yeah, just one of the things I wanted to mention about what we're going through right now in this coronavirus thing is something I've noticed in terms of, I guess I call it collateral beauty. Some of the wonderful things that are coming out. I mean, a friend of ours, Steve Rosenthal, put together, you guys know Steve. Minyon sent me his email the other day. He's put together a group of people to raise money to buy food for hospital workers. And Ben's Chili Bowl was doing terrible. I mean, they're like 80% down in sales, and he did a deal with them to help so that they could get some money, but they could help provide free lunches. But people are being creative, and I see so much more empathy. I mean, we've had a terrible 3.5 years, just an ugly, ugly, ugly. It's been an ugly time. And I see people just being kinder and nicer. I mean, even the few times I do go into a grocery store, people, they're social distancing, they're being kind, they're speaking hello, and I hope this sticks. I really hope this sticks, because we got to change this country around. This is not good.
There'll be one big change. A big difference.
Right.
I tell you, I spent the first 2 or 3 weeks of this DC. I think we were about to head into week 6 of stay at home. I spent the first couple of weeks really pissed off about the disruption of my life and about everything that was going on around us, and how did our country let this happen, and just in a major funk about the disruption. But then about 2 weeks ago, I had a change of mind, just a shift. And I said, this disruption has in many ways been a good thing for our country, because it has exposed the disparity that some of us knew, but not all of us knew. It has exposed how our government is not working for us and the leadership that we don't have. But on a personal level, it's also exposed our own complicity and how our apathy has allowed this pandemic to take the toll it is taking. It has reinvigorated our relationships in some spaces, because now we are focused on who we don't see and how we want to be better with our friends and our families and our loved ones. It's caused us all to look internally and to get comfortable with ourselves, because so most of us haven't spent this much time with ourselves in a long time. It's caused to marry people to strengthen their relationship. And so I'm in a place now where I bless the disruption. I'm grateful for the disruption. And I'm ready to see what's going to happen next and how we go back to our lives after this, determined to make changes in our government, in the way that we treat each other, in the way that we treat ourselves, so that this can never happen again in our country. It can never happen again in our lives. And that's so right now I'm blessing the disruption. And sometimes I get upset, sometimes I get frustrated, and I lean on my faith and I say, God has promised us that in the end, it's going to be all right. And if it's not all right, then it's not the end. And so there's more to come, and I'm excited about it.
Thank you.
Great point. People call all the time and this and that. How you doing? There's 26 million Americans today that have no job.
Right.
That's
There's
right.
about 80 million people today that don't know how they're going to put food on the table
Yep.
tonight. We have nothing to complain about, and
That's right.
we always got to remember that, and we got to do a little extra to help, because it is really tough out there.
That's right.
That's right.
Thank you.
I'm doing great.
You look good.
All right.
You do look good. Okay,
Thank you all
thank
so
you.
much. This was
Thank
really
you
great.
all.
Thanks,
See you
Susie.
again.
Thank you.
God bless.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
America.
It was
Thank you.
fun.
Alrighty.
Joining.
Take care. Everybody stay safe.
Bye-bye.
God bless you.